I was gonna do like a real dramatic fade in, but I really realized it didn't look as well. But I'm your host, Brendan Taylor. Still haven't figured out a name for this thing yet, but I am kind of leading toward the Untitled podcast. I think it's got a ring to it, unless there is some copyright infringement, then we're not going to call it that. You know what I mean? But I'm here with my guest today, Mr. Gregory Batson. Appreciate you for showing up.
Pleasure is mine.
I wanted to ask, for those people that don't know, Mr. Batson here serves as a drug and alcohol treatment specialist in prison systems here in Pennsylvania. My first question to you, I know a little bit about your story. You told me about it. So what would you say your biggest lesson was for going to prison?
Wow. Wow, that's a good one.
I told you we were starting off.
Wow, that's a good one.
Yeah.
The biggest lesson I learned from going to prison. I remember when I walked into the pod and I saw all the people, the first thought that came to my mind was, I heard her hanging out with the homies, but this is ridiculous. Right? So basically, I had bitten off more than I could chew. I guess it was one of the biggest lessons, following behind people, being a part of the crowd.
Right.
And I always had to do the most, always had to go hard in the paint. That just comes with, being in the neighborhood that I came up with. So always having to do the most and being out front and all of that. I thought it was going to get me something. But when I saw, ultimately what happened, me going to jail, it was a big letdown. It was a big letdown. I was taught better than that. I knew better than that. I saw better than that. But I still made the choices I made because there was a certain lifestyle that was attractive to me. It didn't become unattractive until I got there in jail. So I guess one of the biggest lessons I learned was who I was really. Because the person that did all of that stuff to go to jail, that wasn't really me.
Right.
But, sometime after that, I began the journey of trying to find out, who I actually was. But I knew it wasn't that.
Right. And how long did you serve?
I would think I was incarcerated on 2 separate occasions. One time was 4 months and the second time was 4 months.
Okay.
But one day was enough to teach me that lesson.
Right.
One day was enough for me. Some people do a lot of time and they never have that breakthrough, and they don't learn a lesson except how to continue on in that process. So in that sense, it was a good wake-up call, I guess.
What was, if you don't mind sharing, what was the charge? What was the reason why?
I was charged with robbery.
Okay.
Because I was strung out on cocaine at the time. So I was just running up in the stores in my neighborhood, sticking them up. I never had a gun. I just had my hand in the bag, acting like I had a gun. And what happened was I ran into one store and dude pulled out a 9 on me. And when he pulled the 9 and put it in my face, I had to pull my hand out the bag and say,
Right, I don't have anything.
like that, And at that point in time, my mindset was just do or die. Either I'm going to get locked up and maybe get clean, or I'm going to just keep getting high. So
yeah,
it was robbery.
Robbery. How old were you?
22.
22. Okay. I think that would probably fall in that age range, I guess, kind of where you see a lot of, crime, tend to be younger and stuff like that. They say your brain doesn't even develop to about fully to 25. So it's still fairly.
It was an impressionable age.
Yeah.
I was going through an impressionable time, but I wasn't, I wasn't getting the right impressions. I was getting all the bad impressions.
No, I didn't. You wouldn't be the only one. Can you describe, did you have to take a bus ride to the joint or no?
Yeah.
Can you describe the first bus ride to prison as well? What was it like when you got out?
Excellent question. What happens when it's your first time taking that ride? The people that you're in the bus with, most of them, it's not their first time. Right. So there's a little hazing thing that goes on where the people who's been there before kind of identify the people who's never been
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
and they start telling all kind of stories,
Mhm.
right? So I was crapping my pants
Yeah.
on the way up there from listening to these guys, and they were saying, this going to happen, and oh, if you don't know this person and you ain't cool with them, that's going to happen, you know? So yeah, I was very scared. Now I could hold my hands,
Right.
but I can't fight 20 people. I
That
can't fight
yeah,
10 people
exactly.
who've been
Right.
lifting weights for the past 6
Exactly.
months.
The Superman. They love the
And that's
Superman.
what they were saying. They were saying it was big muscle bound guys, you know, who like to take advantage of a little guy, unsuspecting guys,
Mhm.
you know. So yeah, I was worried. I was very worried on that first ride.
Sure. What was it like when you got released? Does that seem like kinda like the Twilight Zone?
I got released at City Court at that particular time.
Mhm.
Sometime was held at City Hall. So I was released from court in City Hall. And when I walked out into the City Hall ground, I got on the floor and I kissed the ground. Literally.
Yeah.
I kissed the sidewalk that people had been walking up and down on.
Man, that tells you about everything you need to know. I did have another question, but that's it. I mean, that man.
But that wasn't my last time up there. So, you know,
Right.
that wasn't my last time.
Why do you think
Should have been.
why do you think you went? Why do you, in your mind, what would you say, like, frame of mind, why do you think you went back? Or you think you weren't really
Drug addiction.
drug
Because of
addiction?
addiction.
Okay.
You know, there's a lot of people up there that if you subtract the drugs and the alcohol, more than half of them wouldn't be up there. You know, there's always parts of society that need to be up there, and we're
Right.
thankful that they're up there.
Exactly.
But most of them are just drug and alcohol, you know, crimes, drug related. Yep.
Mm. So you being on the other side of this now, being free for so 20, yeah, so that was a while ago. So being free now, how do you look back at the time that you spent in prison? Do you have any
With extreme gratitude, because all of the people I see every day and work with every day could be me.
mm,
That very easily could be me,
mm,
you know?
yeah.
So I go to work with buckets and buckets and loads of gratitude and
Mm.
thankfulness, and I try to I guess direct that energy into how I do my job and what I bring to my job.
That's beautiful. I think there's so much to be said. I think when people are in the positions that you're in, and the people who are in positions of authority actually care. They've been in. It doesn't necessarily mean that everyone in that in the prison system has to have gone to prison to do it. But man, I think the gratitude thing and having the understanding and the empathy for people. I've been in your shoes. I want you to win. I'm not just here uh, just to collect a paycheck, but I actually want to, be the change that I want to see. Man, I think that's beyond beautiful. I think you change one person at a time, help make it a better world. But so how long have you been working in the drug and alcohol treatment in prisons? How long?
In 2025 will be 30 years.
30
Mhm.
years. Wow.
I got my first counselor's job in 1995 at a place called Cadenzia Inc.
I was born in 1995. You still look great. I mean, I know age, but I was doing the math. I was like, should I say? I was like, wow, that's the perspective. Man, how did you get started? Did they reach out to you? Did you reach out? And how does somebody who was an inmate? Because that's not. I mean, that's part of the reason why I wanted to talk to you too. I can't think. I'm trying to think of an analogy for it.
It's nothing deep. It's nothing deep.
Mm.
When I went to jail, I didn't really get clean then. I got clean later on.
Okay.
And what happened was I was clean and going to meetings and um, building a relationship with God and kind of changing my life and moving in a different direction. And I realized, okay, I'm starting to have children. At that point in time, I think I had a 6-month-old, and there was one on the way. And at that time, my job was making cheesesteaks and hoagies.
Mm.
And I realized I probably couldn't support a family making cheesesteaks and hoagies, even though I enjoyed it. But the only two things I knew how to do was crime and recovery. that would make me more money. I only knew how to do two things.
Right.
I knew recovery and I knew crime. And since the family was coming, I had to put the crime to the side. So I said, well, maybe I can, there's people that are working as counselors, and I knew a few. And some of the people I was, hanging around, spending time with, was going to school and trying to be in the field of psychology and addiction treatment. So I kind of just went with the flow. I'm a high school dropout. I never finished high school, so going back to school, getting an associate degree, bachelor's degree, master's degree, state certification.
You got a master's degree?
Yes.
Oh, congratulations.
And all of that only happened because of the people I was hanging around. That's what all of them was doing.
Right.
And I was like, I'm like mid-20s.
Okay.
And I'm hanging around with guys that are like 60, 65, and all they talk about is they got a paper due for school. They got a book report due for school. They got to read a chapter for school. And I'm sitting back saying, wait, man, you like 65.
Right.
And you going to school? If they can go to school, man,
Right.
let me take my GED test.
Mm-hmm.
And if I pass my GED test, I'm going to community. Man, that's how it started. It's just different association.
Yeah. Sure.
When I associated with criminals, that's what we did.
Yeah.
So it was basically just changing association.
1000%. I know one of the biggest things that changed my life was I had a mentor. He told me, he said, if you want to see who you should be hanging around, listen to the conversations from afar. And you realize certain things that are said, but then it's like the people you probably should be around, and you hear the conversations. It's not necessarily like that everything's going perfect, but it's like, no, I don't have it yet, but like I'm doing it. Like it's never really problems, but it's like, but this is the solution for it. Got this coming. I got to grind with this. And it's like, oh, okay. And just how that rubs off on you, like human beings, we're meant to survive too. So if we have a bunch of people in the group who are all talking about, yeah, I'm going to handle this. I'm going to get this done. Nobody wants to be the one in the group saying, yeah, I'm not going to do anything. We want to fit in too. So
that's right.
We're just fitting in with the right groups. That's crucial. But I also feel that's what we're not doing. I feel a lot of young kids, especially now, I don't know how much it's changed, but
Well, the ability to handle the pressure.
Right.
I never had the ability to handle the pressure. I don't know where it came from, but then again, I do know where it came from. It came from God. Maybe I was looking for it in myself, which is why I never had it, which is why I never got it. But at the point in time where I did, I was like, okay, now I know what to do and I know where to go. And I really don't care, who feels a certain kind of way about it. Because if you feel a certain kind of way about it, you was never my friend in the first place.
Right.
So.
Right. We need to write that one down. There's a camera. Write that one down. Quote you now. That was good. Other than alcohol and drugs, obviously drugs, what drugs in 2024 you notice seem to be the most problematic now?
Well, right now in Philadelphia, if you look at Kensington, you see the results of a drug called xylazine, which is a large animal tranquilizer. And the people who are using xylazine once were using opiates, right? But xylazine is not an opiate. So all of the treatments that they used for the opiates, which don't work with xylazine because it's not an opiate. So it's kind of like the doctors and the scientists are still figuring out the medical treatment for xylazine. The rest of the treatment is going to be the same. The mental, the spiritual, and all of that is probably going to be the same.
Yeah.
But the medical part, why is this thing making people lose limbs and
the holes in? Like I think I saw somebody like a hole, like an actual hole. You see through through an arm.
It's tearing off limbs and making holes in people. So and for a long period of time, those people couldn't go to the ER because they wouldn't take them. They couldn't go to inpatient treatment because inpatient treatment couldn't take them because of the medical conditions. So a lot of them were just stuck. I think they're doing more now to try to address it.
Mm-hmm.
I know in the prison system, we're preparing for that, to address that as well. And there's a couple of different ideas floating around that they're going to, put into action.
What do you think? Well, obviously, we see Kensington too. It's got national attention, national headlines. I've actually walked through there a couple of times before. One time at night, which that was kind of dumb. But I was dating this girl at the time too, and she was from the Caribbean. I remember she said she had to go to a doctor's appointment, and she didn't have a car. I usually drive her. And I remember I was like, yeah, I can't take you. I'm sorry. But I remember she said, oh, it's fine. I'm just going to go to this place. And I saw where I think the CVS was. And I was like, what time's your appointment? She's like, I think it's like at 5 or 6. It was during daylight savings time. So it starts to get dark around 3:34. She's not from the country. And I'm like, I would highly, highly advise you not to go. And that is like near Kensington, like by yourself. Like I was literally send you an Uber, but it's like you don't want to be caught it when it's dark, like literally by yourself.
Yeah.
I would highly, 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 like Chris Tucker, ever, 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 highly, highly advise you not to go by yourself there.
Facts.
It's like I can't describe it to you, but it's just I would avoid it. But getting back to what I was saying with my question, how do we fix how do we fix this problem in Kensington? How do we get to the root cause of this? I have to put you on the spot.
My solution would be to round them all up and put them in Holmesburg Prison, which is now closed down, right? Open it up and put them all in there. And if you want treatment, you can go over there. If you don't want treatment, you can go over there. That would be my solution. And hopefully everybody would get to the point where they wanted treatment and people would get treatment, you know. Usually everybody doesn't get it,
Right.
you know, but that's a drastic situation. So you got to start taking drastic measures, you know. But that's what I would do because I believe in treatment. I know it works, you know. They just have to get those drugs out of their system, get their mind clear, you know.
That's the hard part.
That's the hard part because the withdrawal is so more powerful and so more dramatic than regular opiates. That's what keeps a lot of people from seeking treatment. The withdrawal comes so sudden and it's so hard and it's not like opiates. Opiates, you got a little bit of time. You got a few days to get things in order. With xylazine, it's a few hours. It's a few hours and you're going to be sick. You're going to be sick as a dog, you know, for a few weeks. So it's rough.
Yeah.
It's rough. And to round up all those people and put them in there, they really, the doctors really haven't put together a protocol for the withdrawal that happens with xylazine.
Do you foresee it getting worse or ever getting better? Just kind of staying.
I can't see it getting much worse than, you know, some of the scenes you see up there now. We just got to start addressing it. I don't think it can get worse, but because it's, you know, with them, it's like no place to go but up.
It's literally you get off the train at Allegheny. It's literally like zombies, like people just put your hand in front of their face. Just there's no life in the eye. There's almost just like people are just kind of just standing there lifeless, and it's just like, man. And it's not to get political or anything, but it's just like we spend a lot of money to a lot of other countries and stuff like that. But I'm like, boy, you know, our place is far from clean. You know what I mean? We love to be the moral authority for everyone, but we sure gotta like a lot of people who were born in this country, and it's just kind of just like we should probably, you know, if all the people there got treated and got taken care of, you imagine, you know, the good that would come out of it. But
that's the idea. Turn them all into tax-paying, productive citizens.
That wouldn't help the economy. But
yeah,
I don't want to say too much.
A lot of people like myself in recovery feel like the reason we got clean was to help out with these type of situations and help other people get clean. That was the purpose for us getting clean, to be there for other people. A lot of people feel that way.
Sure. No, I can see that too. And it's like, you know, I feel like for you, people who've been in those situations, nobody can BS you. Just like I've been in, like, cause some people come in, I remember watching the show. It's like, I forget what it was about, but it's like, he's out in LA or something. Like he used to be a rock star, but now he helps people with treatment and addiction out there. And he's like, all these celebrities come in and they think that they can BS me. He's like, dude, I have everything you've done. I've done times 50. There's nothing that you can tell me or make an excuse about that I haven't said myself, that I don't know. So it's like, it's almost like perfect. They have, I've said this before too, they have people who used to be who used to break into people's houses. Some people are hired for home security. They're like,
that's right.
We check the window. He's like, no, I would break in. He's like, if I was still doing this, that door's going to get kicked in. He's like, I could probably do it myself. I could break in up there and there. So it's like, I don't feel like you necessarily have to throw everyone away. Everyone can, be redeemed,
Absolutely.
you know.
Absolutely.
It's like probably one of my favorite movies, and I watched it as a kid, but I watched it again about 5 years ago. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie He Got Game with Denzel Washington.
Yes.
That's probably one of my favorite ones
That's
because
a good one.
it's the really redemptive. It's like I didn't realize until about 5 years ago. I just thought it was entertaining and stuff, but just really realized the message of just the forgiveness and redemptive thing. I'm like, man, it really hits close to home. So,
Mhm.
no. But yeah, I think that's probably one of my favorite movies. And what do you feel is the biggest obstacles to keeping specifically, I wouldn't say civilians, but inmates sober? What do you think some of the biggest obstacles to keeping those guys clean?
Mm. Probably when people glamorize, certain lifestyles. America has always had a love affair with the gangster,
Mm,
right? That's why Pulp Fiction swept the Oscars, Goodfellas swept the Oscars. The Godfather is one of the all-time greatest movies because for some reason, America loves the gangster, right? But they tell both sides of the story, but it's one thing to watch it on the screen, and then it's a different thing when you live in it.
mhm.
You know what I mean? When you
Right.
live in it, it's like you got to scratch your head a little bit and say, you know what? I had other options than this. I could have been doing something else other than this.
For
You
sure.
know. So the biggest obstacle, and then now we have social media. You have unlimited media. When I was growing up, the TV went off at 2 o'clock to the
Mhm.
Star Spangled Banner. You had 3, 6, and 10, and a couple of UHF channels. Now you got hundreds of channels that never go off.
And still nothing good on TV. So,
So, and then a lot of that is, glorification of having it all, living the good life. So everybody's impressed with that. Um, but not so much impressed with doing the internal work, developing themselves spiritually. If we could put more spotlight on that type of lifestyle as opposed to the cars and the women and the money and all of that, you know, I think that would make a big difference. That's the biggest thing, the way people glamorize certain lifestyles.
when you mention internal work, what does that mean? What did that look like for you? Because I feel that probably to make the transformation for you, what did the internal work look like for you?
For me, it meant going all the way back
Mm,
and looking at my whole life and looking at the traumatic things that happened and how I responded to them. And if I responded to them incorrectly, to make those corrections, you know. And you spoke about it earlier. Make those forgivenesses that need to be forgiven.
mm,
Biggest one is forgiving myself
mm,
because, like I said, I was taught better and I knew better, but I made different choices. And I held myself in a lot of guilt and shame for a long time until, coming into recovery, people had to teach me, okay, you forgave everybody else. Now you have to forgive yourself. That's something you have to learn. It's specific steps to that. You know what I mean? And when people hear those steps and then they start doing them and they get the chance to let themselves off the hook, right? Then they don't carry around the guilt and the shame and the remorse and you can walk down the street, hold your head up high and look people in the eye
mhm.
and not feel like, I'm less than.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then once you start that kind of work, then it's a little easier to say, you know what, wait a minute. What is my full potential? You know,
Mm,
what can I do if I put some effort and some energy to it? You know what I mean?
yeah.
And then you just see people take off. I mean, there's no money in what I do. It pays you $1.50 a week. But I get paid when I see somebody 2 years later in Home Depot, right, shopping for their house that they purchased, or they want to fix something in their apartment, or I see them in Red Lobster with their family,
Yeah.
right? And the wife comes up and hugs me and say, I remember I spoke to you on the phone and such and
Yeah.
such. That's our paycheck.
Yeah. Hopefully some cheddar biscuits though too. That wouldn't be bad. That's just me. That's right. I wouldn't mind that. You don't have to give me anything. I said, I'll take a couple cheddar biscuits. But no, I think that would make you also a wealthy man too, where so many people know you, where it's just like, I've done so much for people, where it's like, if I'm ever in a situation, there's like, you want to be able to walk in a place, your money's no good here, man. This person,
Yeah, that happens.
know,
Yeah, that happens.
yeah, beautiful. If you could have it your way, what changes would you make in the prison system specifically of how treatment and addiction is run specifically within the prison system? If you had the hand to make it all, or let's say since we were talking about gangsters, like the Godfather, the Black Hand, to be able to wield it, what would it look like for you? How would you put your spin on that?
Another great question. You asked some great
I
questions.
wrote them down too because sometimes I come up with these, wake up at 5 a.m. after, and I'm like, I should have asked this stuff. So
And a lot of us come to work every day with those kind of thoughts. Probably the biggest thing I would want to do is get everybody on the same page because in the prison system, you have different departments. You have security, right, which is responsible for everybody's safety. And then you have social services, you have medical. And a lot of times those groups aren't always on the same page. Security is going to do security. That's first and foremost. That's the most important. But sometimes you get into a thing where security wants to tell social work how to do social work wants to tell security how to do security, medical wants to tell, and it's a little bit standoffish. But if everybody got on the same page, see, security is never going to look at the inmate the way I look at him.
right.
They're going to look at him as a person who committed a crime. Now you're here and I have to keep everything safe. I'm looking at it as one of God's lost sheep and I'm trying to lead them back to God. You see what I'm saying? So they may get forgiveness for knocking somebody upside the head, taking their pocketbook. But security don't look at it that way. You did the crime, now you're doing the time.
Right.
And they don't have that redemptive forgiveness mindset. They got a straight up security and safety. So sometimes it's difficult to deal with them because we have to explain to them, okay, in order for treatment to work, we have to do this, 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 and this. And they'll say, okay, well, you could do 2 of those things, but the other 2 you can't do. So it's like, okay, well, then this program will never function at its highest level, as long as we can't do it the way we're supposed to do it. And all we need is this and this. And it's here, you could do it, but, so it's back and forth. So sometimes what happens is we have to do the best with what we got.
Sure.
So it's just a little give and take. But if everybody got on the same page, and maybe that can happen, maybe it can't. Maybe they can never look at the people the way we look at them. Maybe we could never look at them the way they look at them. But we could understand that everyone has a job to do. So let's work together as opposed to working in silos. You got 4 different silos. Nobody's talking to nobody. Nobody's communicating with nobody. Come on, y'all.
Yeah.
Let's get on the same page.
Sure.
Philadelphia, I guess, is like what, the 5th largest city. It has the biggest prison population in the state. So it's a lot of numbers. It's a lot to have to deal with, and they get a lot of bad press, but they actually do a really good job.
That's good.
They do a really good job considering what they have to work with.
Good. I didn't know that. Very good. So what era did you grow up in?
What area?
Era.
70s,
80s, 90s.
I was born in the 60s.
60s.
So,
okay.
I kind of watched hip hop begin.
Okay. Perfect.
Hip hop starting. I was a hip hopper early on, I guess. And it was 2 phases of hip hop. It was one phase, the first phase of hip hop, everybody was equal. When you come to the party, you got just as good a shot as getting a pretty girl as the next man.
Right.
Now, when crack cocaine came in, that changed everything. Now everybody wasn't equal because it was a group over in the corner with big fat gold ropes, pockets, got the mumps, they got the newest sneakers and stuff like that. And if you wasn't coming in like that, and then that's when it kind of moved to the Gucci and Cristal and Louis Vuitton and all. But hip hop existed for a while without all that. I mean, it had its own fashion in its own style, but it wasn't real flashy because everybody was broke. But then when people started to get money, that's when it kind of changed, so. And a lot of and what happened is a bunch of people either became drug dealers or became drug users,
Mm.
you know.
And that was was that in 60s, 70s? They were all throughout
That
the
was like early 80s.
early 80s. Kind of the peak of crack.
No, that's when it started. The peak was like the 90s.
Okay.
The peak was like the 90s. And neighborhoods changed, communities changed. It used to be it takes a village. It used to be everybody on the block had a say-so in your behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Once that came in, all that changed because people started doing different things and the attitude came to, don't say nothing to my child.
Right.
You can't say nothing to nobody's child. I mean, if you acted up in school, the school officials was going to take care of you.
Right.
But then when you got home, you was going to get taken care of. All that's changed now. All that's changed.
That is an understatement. Because I remember, because I have a lot of people who I look up to, and I have a lot of elders who are mentors to me, but they did tell me, there was a time, it didn't matter whose son or daughter you were, if you're doing stuff you're not supposed to, you might not have seen this man before. He has every right to tell you, don't bring that in.
That's right.
Don't bring that into the neighborhood
right.
with people just trying to go about their day, do their jobs, come back home, be around their loved ones. If you're going to do that, go over there. Or some people would just tell, some people would tell at that time too. And it's not, they have no code to uphold. They're civilians. They're not in street rule. You know what I mean? Where it's like those people,
Exactly.
the street rules don't apply
Exactly.
to those people who aren't in it.
Right.
And you have a lot of shows now too, to piggyback what you were saying off of how the neighborhood changed. I don't know if you've seen the TV show Snowfall on FX.
One of my favorites.
So it's really showing, man. I think it's good that I think with those type of shows too, you do have to show the consequences of that. I think that there's a certain level of it being irresponsible to say, hey, there's this young kid, he gets all this money and it's all good. It's like, no, Then this is a spoiler alert too. If you haven't seen Snowfall, take about 30 seconds to cover your ears and stuff like that, because it's kind of ruining it for you. But, to see the people you love directly affected, and it's like in the end, what are you kind of left with?
And the funny thing about Snowfall, a lot of that was based on true stories.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. I was like, a lot of that.
All that really happened.
Yeah, I was like, I believe it. I was like, yeah, that and they said the Wire was too, but it didn't take place in the 2000s. They said what that was based off of. They said that was based off of stuff in the 80s, but they just put it at the time in a modern era. But they had what I liked about The Wire though. They did have a lot of stuff. They did show a lot. It was what was going on in that area, but they did do a good job, I think, of showing people's humanity. They had a kid named, I think it probably probably one of the saddest stories I've ever seen. It was the kid Daquan, who could fix computers, didn't have any formal training. The teacher's like, I can't fix the computer. He's like, oh, I know how to fix it. And he just does it quick. And the teacher's looking at him. He's like, how do you learn how to do it? He's like, I don't know. It just comes easy. And his story, and it's just like, that kid would have been a millionaire.
Yeah.
I said, this kid can fix computers with no formal training. But it's just like, man, it's just, you start to think of how many kids like that are out there where it's like, could you imagine he owns his own IT company or something like that? And
I see him all the time. And I try to show as many people the story of Wallow 267 as I can.
Yeah, exactly, too.
That's one.
Shout out to you. I know there's only 2 people watching this right now, but if you want to watch this podcast, man, you're welcome to be on at any time, too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the stories I try to show as often as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to tell people everybody can be a Wallow.
Right.
But you got potential.
Sure.
You just got to tap into it and see where it takes you.
For sure. I think people don't realize too. I think, again, what we were saying about they see the money, the cars, and the women. I don't think people realize when they get that money, you're gonna have to actually work hard. People say, I'm gonna be chilling. I'm like, no, the more money and fame and notoriety you get, how you think you're gonna be able to maintain it? Just like you got a hit record on, I almost said on the radio, but some people don't really listen to it like more. But you almost got a hit song, people aren't going to be like, oh, Ray, this is good. They're going to say, we want another one. That was good. We want another one. Hey, when's your album coming out? That's a good album. Can you follow? So it's like the more of it you get, you actually have less time to rest, less time to chill. So it's almost like be careful what you ask for.
Mm-hmm.
You have all these stories, a couple off the top, probably Mike Tyson, Bobby Brown, where it's like, man, they're saying be careful what you wish for because you just might get it and cost you everything. I feel bad. You know who I feel bad for though? Really do. I feel bad for Bobby Brown. I feel like he said, I think everyone in his life he got out of the hood, right? But I think all of his loved ones are like, they're like gone. His daughter, Whitney, I think maybe one of his sons, but it's just like, you start to think, it's just, man, he's just left with, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of good memories.
Man, that's tough. That is tough, man. We went on that time is fine. We went on a little bit of a tangent, but that's a good thing. Man. We were just flowing. So drugs, poverty, and violence from your perspective, in the city of Philadelphia, do you think things have gotten worse now? Are they better? Are they staying the same? What have you seen from your perspective, being able to view all these years?
In some ways, it's gotten better.
Mm.
In some ways, it stayed the same, and in some ways, it's gotten worse. Society has just progressed, right? And this society says one thing, but you can clearly see that the principles that it's based off aren't the best.
Mm-hmm.
If the principles that the country was founded on, if they lived up to it at the time that it was started, instead of running way out in front of me, you done lapped me twice, and now we're all on the same page. We'll never be on the same page because you lapped me twice already.
Mm-hmm.
So, and now they don't even want the programs around to allow people to even get running good. They want affirmative actions gone. They want the DEI, all that kind of stuff gone. So, but we're in a society now where if you focus, you can make something of yourself. A lot of people don't believe that. A lot of people that are where I'm working at, they don't believe that because they see like everything is stacked against them. But it's not everything. Sometimes it looks that way. Sometimes it seems that way. But that's really not how it is. There's things stacked for you as well. They're just a little harder to see.
Mm.
And, we live in a time of instant gratification as opposed to delayed gratification. Everybody wants it right now. Instead of taking their time to build, they want the fast money instead of slow money. Slow money is boring.
Right.
The fast money is flashy.
Mm-hmm.
But look at the price people are paying for that. Is it worth it? Most of them will say no. Most of them will say no. I'll take my time and relax and slow walk everything and enjoy life. I'm not running that fast. I'm moving slow, so I see everything. But it has progressed. Look at technology and all that kind of stuff. The things they've done in the last 50 to 100 years.
Yeah.
100 years ago, I don't think we had cars. So in the short period of time, a lot has happened.
Mm-hmm.
And in the next 50 to 100 years, a lot more can happen. But the humanity has to kick in with people.
Right.
They're getting all of the stuff and they're forgetting about humanity.
Well, that's the AI. Well, here's the scary thing, right? So if the AI is watching us, how we get down, you start putting two to two together. I'm like, I don't know if we really want some stuff mimicking each other. Is getting their cues from us. I'm like, I'm not saying everybody's bad, but you got robots seeing how vicious and savage we can be. Hey, if the robots are listening, this is all in good fun. But man, it's start to think about the future thing where it's like we have more technology than we've ever had, more convenience than we ever had. But I feel like in a sense, we're losing humanity with more, like we're not ready for all the advancements that we're making. It's almost like we're not ready for it.
I think I read an article yesterday of one of the world's foremost experts on AI, right? He's like top 3, top 5. And he said, we're not at a point where we can trust the machines. We're not there. But they're still, advancing it and improving on it and building on it. So
For the record, if anybody comes on this podcast, I'm not saying anything bad about AI. That's not what this is. I'm just talking about things where I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready for certain robots, sort of like the self-driving cars and stuff like that. I just have my doubts. So don't let this scare you off. But I still love to have you on the show. So yeah, but I just yeah, you think of like a 15-year-old kid driving a car for the first time. You struggling to, hands like this, 10 and 2 or however it's supposed to be. He said, we're just going to go around the corner. They're struggling to do that. You're not going to put the kid on the freeway. We're going to get into a car crash. So I don't know, man. I just have a lot of questions and we can't handle ourselves, man. I don't know. I have a lot more questions than answers right now.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know if we're ready for all this stuff that seems to be just coming so fast. Can we handle it? Do we deserve it though? I think that's the question too. I'm like,
are we responsible?
that's what I mean. Are we?
And we already know the answer to that.
They haven't had that great of a track record, so I'm like, I don't know about. But I think there is good sense in the AI of things that it can help you in the workplace, where it's like, you know, helping with papers and helping getting work. I'm talking about the big stuff where it's like, we're going to have the first completely manless, fighter pilot or something. I'm like, I need some time. I need some time. Another thing. It gets pretty bad when you're having trouble reading your own handwriting. You get through or something. So going back to you when you serve time in prison, what would you say to yourself the first time you stepped into there? If you go back in time, you have a time machine, what would you say to yourself? Version of you stepping into prison for the first time and your whole overall journey through this, being incarcerated, being addicted to drugs and trying to get clean. What would you say to yourself?
I probably would want to ask myself a question. Is this you?
Mm.
And listen for the answer.
What do you think he would say, that version of you at that time?
I probably would say, no, it's not me. But then the next question would be, then how the heck did I get here? If this isn't me, what am I doing here? But the truth of the matter is, at that time, that's exactly who that was exactly me.
Mm-hmm.
I just needed to undergo some changes and start looking at what was important in my life and what wasn't important. Is self-acceptance more important than being accepted by other people? Because that was my mission. I just wanted to be a part of. I just wanted to be a part of the crowd and be accepted and everybody. Now, mind you, I had no self-acceptance, but if you accept me, then I'm okay. No. Mm-mm. I didn't have courage.
Mm.
I could run down a list of things that I used to do that people might say, well, if you did that, that took a lot of courage. But the courage to be different from everybody else and stand alone on some things, no, I'm not doing that. Yeah. I didn't have that kind of courage. I had to go to God for that kind of courage because it just wasn't natural. I was a follower. I didn't have the courage to stand on my own and whoever wanted to be a part of it, come on. I didn't have that kind of courage.
Do you think that it's partly because kids growing up in that area, they don't have safe spaces kind of to be protected to be themselves?
That's a piece of it. Mm-hmm.
How big of a piece would you say that is?
I would say maybe a quarter. That's a quarter of it. And then it's a lot of things to go on. A lot of things to go on. People from that era, from the era I came up with, most of our parents migrated up north from down south.
Right.
Most of the decisions they made down south was so you didn't get lynched in the woods. Mm-hmm. But they brought that mentality up here, and we thought they were just mean and strict. No, they wasn't mean and strict. They paranoid. They're paranoid, and they're like, grieving, and they don't want to keep grieving. So yeah, they're extra strict, but they never explain. We didn't get the explanation why y'all so gun ho on this and that. We didn't really get the explanation. We just saw the action. Can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. And that's no way to raise a child.
Right.
You have to give a child some freedom to do some things with some boundaries and, and allow them some room to develop. And then you have a good chance of somebody coming up right. But if you just strict, first chance they get, they're going to be gone. And that's how he was.
I've seen that too, especially in college scenarios. The kids that are doing some of the wildest stuff, it's not who you think. It's the kids who are the most sheltered and strictest parents. Those are the kids, a lot of times, they end up overdosing because they've never had any, never had any exposure to being able to make a good or bad decision for themselves. And I've seen it happen. Some of those kids go off the deep end and it's just like, well, how could this happen? Their parents were so strict. I said, it's almost like having no immune system to where it's like almost like a common cold will kill you or a lowered immune system. But it's like, but if you're around, it's not to say you purposely put people in those situations, but it's like, a cold's not going to be detrimental to the average person. Might make your nose kind of stuffy or runny or something, but it's not the end of the world. But yeah, I've seen that a few times, man, where it was bad. So, but I think it's another thing too that we know what we know now. I think people see we are very kind of like, not anyone specifically, but I think we learn stuff. We kind of scoff at every generation kind of scoffs at one of the generation past. It's kind of like we know what we know now, and I know we all think that we know what we know now, but it's 3 or 4 generations. There's a very good chance a lot of us might not be on the right side of history because they're like, how did they not know this? It was
They knew it.
right.
A lot of it, they just couldn't communicate. They didn't know how to
Right.
communicate it to us in the way that we could receive it.
Right.
Everything they told us was good.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we wasn't able to relate to them. They wasn't able to relate to us.
Man.
And explain it to us in a way that we could receive it. And each generation is supposed to get a little better. I tried to explain to my kids certain things I did, but the most important thing with parenting is time. And when you're of a lower economic status, most of your time is spent just trying to make ends meet. And you don't have the extra time to sit down and explain, okay, I did this for this reason, I did that for that reason, I did that for that reason, so they understand. All they see you go is go boom, 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 and they can understand, why did you just do that? You're just trying to mess up my fun. That's how they take it. No, I'm not trying to mess up your fun. I'm trying to set you up to succeed. I just don't have the time to explain all of that to you. Because I got 2 jobs so that, we got a roof over our head and we can eat.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bunch of different things, man. It's not an easy situation.
Absolutely.
Not an easy situation. So when people, I also worked 5 years at DHS.
Okay.
Right. And a lot of times we receive reports of abuse and neglect, but it wasn't always abuse and neglect. A lot of times it was just parents trying to teach a lesson, but just not knowing the correct way to teach it.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of comes out looking like abuse and neglect, when really that's not what it is. That's just a parent trying to parent.
Yeah. I don't think anyone, I remember someone saying this to me. I don't think anyone, for the most part, I don't think anyone does anything like that maliciously. People do.
Well, there are some that do it
But it's like they're
mostly not,
but like
mostly it's not malicious.
For the most part, it doesn't excuse any actions. But I think for the most part, people do what they generally feel is
the right thing to do.
The right thing to do. Maybe it was explained to
Right.
them. Like we're just essentially just passing on stuff that we've known, that I've known. And then there is a small subset of people who, yes, it was that, but those are the same group of people who are saying, okay, I don't believe you have to throw everyone away. There's a small group of people where, yeah, you can't have Jeffrey Dahmer walking around there. Where there's no amount of there is just some people, maybe it might be a chemical imbalance or something, or something like that, or just, you can't have this person around society because they're going to, some people chop people up and eat. It's just so far gone where it's like,
And then going back to the
Yeah.
principles that this country was founded on, there was a time when it was legal to beat your kids and beat your wife. They were your
I think I heard
they were your
this.
property. You owned them.
No. When
You
was
know,
it? When was this?
this was maybe when the country started, the 1800s,
Oh,
and
yes.
you know, some of this century. Some of this century. The laws of child abuse was drafted maybe in the 40s and 50s. And the laws about abusing kids was drafted from the laws about abusing animals.
I didn't know that.
There. Wow. Yep. Domestic violence. There was a time when, you know, if there was domestic violence going in the house and you called the cops, they came and they did nothing. You know why? Because all of them was at home doing the same thing. But
Yeah.
then they began to pass laws that said, okay, it's illegal to hit your wife. It's against the law. You can't beat your child with a frying pan. It's illegal. It's against the law.
Yeah.
So parents trying to just teach, not knowing the law, once we come in and we explain to them, this is how we teach. You can't do that. That part is against the law. That's going to get you locked up. That's going to get you an assault case.
Mhm.
But if you do this and this and this, they'll get the message.
Mhm.
They'll learn it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a misconception that you can beat something into a person. Nah, it's not true. It's a myth.
Well, you probably know it's like you have all these people in prison. It's like if we took all these in a certain prison here, how many of you guys got a whooping growing up? Probably 99% of them gonna raise their hands. You know what I mean? Where it's like, how many do you have people like who I knew a guy, his family they came from Mississippi. How many of you got beaten with the switch? A lot of people will raise their hands. So it's like, they're still in the prison. I was like, that didn't keep them out of.
Mhm.
So, but again, that's passed down where it's like, we know where that comes from.
Right? That's what I know.
We know
That's
where
what
that,
happened to me. So that's
and we
what
know
I
where that was, but it's like, I think, other generations way back then, so much was predicated on survival too. It doesn't excuse any of that too, but it's just like, okay, the first thing you do once you're out of survival, you almost need a second just to be like, you might just sit in the corner somewhere, just like they might not leave, but it's like it's like the scene you seen Django, right? That scene right when this is another spoiler alert. I like movies, y'all didn't tell, where they're sitting in that cage, and that cage was open, and there's a
took a minute. It took a minute.
I don't think you know what I think? I think they probably didn't. I don't know how long it would take, but probably for a couple of days they probably wouldn't have moved when they were the door cage was wide open, so you can go free now. It's like, well, if that's all you know,
Right.
that thought of freedom is probably going to scare you more than at least this sucks, but
Yeah, I'm gonna sit right here in this cage.
you can go right there. There's nobody going to stop you. But man, circling back to circling back to hip hop as well. What are your thoughts? I don't know. I don't know if I would use the term progression, but the course that you've seen it take from the time you were there in the beginning, before the beginning. I would argue hip hop's been dead for a while, but that's a different
I would.
conversation. Really?
I would.
Why would you say that?
Because hip hop is hip hop. It can never die. It's never going to die. I don't like some of the content they talk about now,
Right.
but the music is fire.
Mhm.
I mean, the rap skills now, I mean, it has continued to develop.
Right.
And the production is also excellent. Far better than any production from any other music that you can look at. These kids is walking around with 3, 4, 5 albums just in their head. They don't even need books and pads anymore. They're so advanced. I just don't like what they're talking about. I don't like the language they use. But the music itself is fire.
Are there any artists that you like today that you listen to currently?
I can't listen. If you're talking about anything negative, I can't listen to it. I listen to the old school stuff from my era. I still listen to that every day. I just was listening to it on the way here.
Yeah.
But the newer stuff today, nah. I think I probably stopped listening probably around Lil Wayne.
Okay.
He was probably the last, big artist I actually paid attention to. But every now and then I do stop and just listen to it, and I'll just play a song straight through from beginning to end. Like the number one, like the single that Thug put out when he came out. That's fire.
Mhm.
It's fire, but I don't like what he's talking about.
Right. Now, Andre 3000 said the same thing. He said the same thing about, he said the same thing about Future. And he was like, Andre 3000, he's known for his lyricism. He's known for making music that I listen to now. Now it's like, oh man, I didn't even catch what he was saying, where it's like
Mhm,
masterpieces. But he's like, every now and again, he's like, I listen to, certain one of the rappers and stuff. He's like, I don't like what they talk about and
mhm.
stuff, but yeah,
Yeah, lyrically, they're excellent. Double entendres, triple entendres. They wasn't doing that in the 80s and in the 90s, so it continues to advance. I just wanted to get on a positive note, because hip hop was actually started
right.
so the gangs would stop fighting each other.
Okay.
So how the heck could it go full circle and turn into like a gang thing? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It started so that me and you could battle with these instead of
Right.
with these.
Yeah.
We could break dance. If you win, you win. You lose, you lose. You go back and practice some more. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I had this happen, I think maybe like 10 years ago. I don't know what it was. I used to like have turntables in my room, like actual vinyl and stuff. And it was one day it just hit me. I just, one of the lyrics, I think it might have been a Big L, might have been Big L. And I think just something clicked in my head. I'm just like, things don't really click until you're ready to hear them. I said, man, a lot of the rappers who are rapping about guns, they're not here anymore.
Hmm.
And I couldn't,
Wow.
there's a certain thought that I couldn't, once you were there, you couldn't pretend like you didn't think it in your head. And I'm like, okay, it's nothing. But then it started to play again and again. And I'm just like,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to use that one in group next week.
I'm like, and I was like, it's probably just nothing. It's like, no, there's no going back. And I just thought of I don't know why it hit me, but it just did. And I was like, Tupac, Biggie. I'm like, oh, I'm like, nah, and you start to listen to the song and it's just like, man, it's so crazy. Like what you put out there, like how that comes back. It doesn't mean that because you put that record out that you deserve that, but it's like the energy you put out. And I go back and I'm just like, it would just hit. It's like I couldn't ignore the lyrics anymore. Where it was just like I couldn't pretend like I didn't hear that thought. And I was just like, every time I'm just like, this person said this, and I'm like, oh, they're not here too. They're not here. They're not here. They're not here. And I'm just like,
Yeah, and that might be why I don't listen to today's rappers, because when I listen to something, I want it to stick with me.
right.
I want it to still be thinking about it an hour or two later. And if all you talking about is negative stuff, that's in one ear and out the other one. But I still like the beat.
No, the beat. You know what I think. What has improved drastically too. I think the producers, the beats have gotten. Sometimes I think the beats pretty much carry the songs. Like some of the producers don't get the amount of credit. The beats are incredible, but it's like not always. Sometimes a lot of times, sometimes the guys can't rap, but it's like the beats. The production qualities of things that is going off. That
Yeah,
I,
that's
I
true. But the engineers get a lot of credit as well, because the stuff that they're working with now was
mhm,
created to do that.
mhm,
But the stuff they was working with back in the day was not.
right.
All the turntables now was created to scratch, but the ones that they started with were not. And if you could develop it good enough to where you could get the nice skate and you could get the nice scratch,
Mhm,
but it wasn't created that way. All the turntables that's been created since the 90s on, it's created so where you can do that. And it's almost effortless. But the turntables from back in the day, it was not effortless. It was a lot you had to do to get it to move the way you needed it to move.
mm,
Same thing with the instruments and the drum machines and the keyboards. A lot of it now, since hip hop basically has took over, they make a lot of that stuff now to make beat programming and make a lot of that stuff a little easier.
it's the biggest. I think that's the biggest. One of the biggest exports. Weird. I was like, I didn't. This is recently. I'm like, yeah, by far. I think it's one of the biggest exports around the world. But yeah, I still listen to some of it, but it's funny. I can think back to that day, man. It's never been the same. Where it's like I can hear it and I can still listen to a song, but I can't unhear that. I can't unhear that thought. I don't know what it was. But I was just like, ever since then, it's just like, just a little bit more aware where it's just like, I wasn't even aware of it before, but, um, yeah, and I do think there are a lot of people profiting off of that image too, and then a lot of kids buying into it. Like, there's I think where I draw the line is, for me, I'm a little bit of a hypocrite. Your music doesn't have to be clean, but I think there's a difference of it, because the whole argument is, "I'm just telling a story." Right? That's what people say. And I would disagree. Not everyone's telling the stories. There's people who are saying, hey, this is where it is. You're not a man if you haven't done this. This is where it's at. There's a different, I can name songs where it's like the song's not clean, but they're pouring their heart out so much that's like, wow, they're actually telling it. But that's the whole argument. It's like, we're just telling the story. I said, no, there's a difference between glorifying something
I
and
was living
saying
with
what
a young
happened.
guy, and I was a lot older than he was, and they kind of put him with me so that I could kind of like mentor him.
Mhm.
And we would have a lot of discussions about hip hop. Um, a lot of the stuff that he was listening to, I didn't listen to because I was so much older than him. But some of the stuff I came up on, he knew some of it. He knew a lot of it. And one day, me and him was having a discussion on who was our favorite MC and why,
Mhm.
right? And I told him who my favorite MC was,
Who was it?
Melly Mel,
Okay.
of course.
All right.
And I explained to him why. And back then, when I came up, the top MCs, you had to be able to have the ability to control the crowd, right? You had to have the ability to give a good show on stage and also be good in the studio. You had to have good lyrics, good timing, right? Good production. So I'm running down the list of why I think this is a top MC, right? And then he tells me who his top MC is. And he only had one reason.
What was that?
I mean, his top MC at the time was Jay-Z.
Okay.
And at the time, I didn't listen to Jay-Z.
What time around the time? What time period?
This was around maybe 2009,
Okay.
2008, 2000.
I know this. I only asked because I know the Jay-Z timeline. Where I remember my dad having the Black Album CD when it came recently. Like, so I know the Jay-Z timeline.
So I
Right.
told you what my list of qualifiers were, right?
Right.
Mic ability, crowd control, so forth and so on, stage presence. Jay-Z was his favorite MC because the stuff he's talked about, he actually did. That was his reasoning, and that was the end of the conversation. I changed the subject after that, and we talked about something else.
Mhm.
So at some point, some people think it was gangster rap. At some point, hip hop changed from music and entertainment and dancing to whatever you say on the record, you have to be doing it. Now, when I think about the Beatles who said, we all live in a yellow submarine, nobody really thought they actually
Right.
lived in a yellow submarine. It's a song lyric,
Right. Right.
right? When Donna Summer said, bad girl, you're such a dirty bad girl, nobody thought she was walking up and down the block tricking. It's a song.
Right.
So where in hip hop did it come where what you say actually has to be, that's what you call the okie doke. That's what you call a 52 pickup.
To the pump fake.
Yeah. And we all, well, I ain't gonna say all, but people bought into it,
Right.
and they still are.
Yeah.
Now it's running crazy.
Oh yeah.
No, it's a record. You're supposed to listen to it and dance to it. Shake your behind to it. That's it. You're not supposed to actually do it and actually live it.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I'll give you a perfect example too. It said so. Uncle Luke from the 2 Live Crew, right? All the stuff he was rapping about. How long has he been married for?
Wow.
How long has he been married? Has he been married since Snoop's been married for how long? Ice Cube, the same.
Right.
You see them? You see that
They
thing?
running over.
Uncle Luke's been with the same woman since what, the late 80s, early 90s?
But he knew what was selling.
But that's what I mean, where it's like people buy into this so much. Or I give you a perfect example, right? Because there's a lot of conversations we had. I've talked to people about this too. Like, I think, in my opinion, from what I've seen, I'm a hip hop historian. I know this very well. I've listened to all the music. I think Tupac might have been one of the most influential artists ever. And I say this, I didn't say he was, I feel like he's the greatest, is like what I've heard. But if we look at people what they portray themselves as and what they were, if you do a little bit of digging in his background, right?
He was a thespian.
Right. Okay.
Well, maybe on Monday,
but
then Tuesday he was a thug. I don't know.
who did he go on tour with first? Digital Underground.
He was a part of that. He was a part of Digital Underground.
These were not hardcore street guys.
No.
The only and this is no disrespect to Tupac or anything, right? When did Tupac take off?
I've never really been a Tupac fan, so I couldn't tell you.
After Juice.
Okay, right.
Afterglow.
That's right. Okay.
That's when it took. It's like his music didn't take off just because of his music. After it's like this dude from Juice raps. After that, he became big. So it's like,
Okay.
you know, we have somebody who is a monumental figure in the rap industry, in the rap, and the whole history of it, right? We look at his whole background. It's like people buy so much into this. I honestly think that's probably, he fell so, a lot of people said this too, that he fell into that role of Bishop and Juice in 1991.
And never got out of it.
That's what got him killed. He said he followed that so much. Now, he had some stuff happen to him, but I think people conflate just because you grow up in a bad area. And I don't use thug as a term of endearment. That doesn't make you that. You have regular people who grow up in the hood. You have nerds that grow up in the hood. You have all different types of people. But if you look at Tupac, I think he was way more complex than what people wanted him to be. And I think there's a part of him as well, from you listen to interviews and stuff, that was frustrated. He couldn't fully express who he was.
Actually, he could. Actually, he
You
could.
think he could?
He could.
And still be loved? And still be loved in the way, why?
He could have self-love. Who cares
Mm.
about
Right.
the other kind of love?
Wow.
He could have some self-love.
Mm.
So he could have done that,
Yeah.
right? But when the lights is on and your bank account filling up and
Right.
people cheering and stuff like that, that stuff can be intoxicating. Can be
Sure.
intoxicating.
Yeah.
But I believe somebody who's like really into Tupac said that he really wanted to be more revolutionary.
He said that. He said, you didn't, he said, he has a quote. He said, you guys didn't love me until I said Thug Life. So he's a rap. He's like, he didn't just start rap. He didn't just start off with that, but he's like, people were not feeling me until I said Thug Life. And it's like, until that role from Juice really put him on the map.
Wow.
But it's like, if you look from that timeline, that was his character. And again, when I look about how things, the energy you put out comes out there, I'm like, I think he has some great songs. Probably one of my favorite songs for him is probably Do for Love. Ironically, there's not one curse word in that song. I don't think that's near his most famous song, but I think for me, that's not one curse word on that one. It's completely clean. I think where that actually bears part of his soul. And it's not to say that he didn't in other songs, but.
Well, in early hip hop, they didn't curse in early hip hop.
But this was, ironically, this song, I don't remember the exact year it came out, but the music video for it was animated because he was dead by the time it came out. But there are a lot of songs of him where it's like, you know, he has the line, my full makes sure all your kids don't grow. And it's just like, all these lyrics that I hear, it's just like.
Now that's bad because I love that song.
But it's like, but you hear, it's like, I can't, but you
like the musical.
But you like the musical
lyrics.
But you hear it and it's just like, man, he's not around. It's like, be very careful what you put out. It's like, you know, all of them, it's like, man, it's this crazy thing. You throw it out there and it just happens to find some of these guys. And I'm like, and it's like, yeah, I don't really want them. It's probably a one-off. And it's like, no, Big L2. I'm like, oh, that's a line. And I'm like, it almost never is like, it never fails. I'm just like, be careful what you're talking about, the energy. Cause it's like, it has a weird way. Doesn't always end with that, but it has a weird way of it.
And a lot of times it's delayed. But in drill music,
that's the worst. That's the worst type
it's
of
not
drill.
delayed.
Oh no.
It's immediate almost.
Oh no, it's the drill. I think the drill it's a progression of things, but the drill scene, and I think, and I'm definitely guilty of it because I listened to it, and at the time too, I would even say maybe like 2011 or 12. I didn't think anyone foresaw it becoming what it is now.
True.
But we're all complicit, especially people my age were complicit. I can't sit here and say, "Oh, nope, I never listened to it. I wasn't aware of it until recent." That it's only when people say, "Oh, I don't understand the kids in high school now." I said they're only listening to what the stuff we put out when we were their age. So it can't be,
That's what they say.
you know what I mean?
But with us, it was just music.
Yeah, it's
We wasn't actually trying to do it.
it's different. When people wonder, it's like people will put, you know, they're doing a lot of the investigative work for some of the, for some of the police officers and stuff, and investigators, man. They're putting the stuff out in songs.
Mhm.
Whereas it's almost
They're doing the investigating for
literally, it's gotten so blatant where it's just like you could almost make a Chappelle show type of skit with it. They're literally leaving details. And I think this goes a little bit deeper. I think a lot of the drill rap is actually guilty conscience. I
turned
think
inward.
I think a lot of some of these kids have done stuff that they feel so horrible about that they have to keep inside.
Mm.
Some of these kids are like, if I go away for this, it might actually be some closure. Just how they say serial killers don't get caught until they're ready to get caught. A lot of the kids, you'd be surprised. So why would you just put the lyrics out that I did this, I did that, I killed this person, I killed that person? They're conscious, man. It's just like, I don't care how strong or tough you think you are. If you have a it's gonna come out at some point. So, man. Oh wow, it's almost 4 o'clock, man. We were flying. Ooh, can we cut real quick? I just need to get a drink of water. Ooh.
And can I use the restroom?
Yeah.
I usually don't like touch the actual camera, so I'll let it roll.
Oh yeah, that was.
You know where
Oh, that.
Good job. You came prepared with twice.
It happened to me once there where I had all these questions 5 in the morning after. Oh, this will never happen to me again. Oh, oh. Did I leave my phone?
yes.
Oh, I did. I would have scared. Thank you. It's- My last person for today.
Oh no.
Oh no, no,
I'm here until 9:30. But that's typically how our days go. But they start at like maybe just a regular work day. It was interesting what you said about the wire. I used to live around there.
are you from Baltimore?
No, I'm from here, but I went out there for school. And I moved back out there to get my master's. And you said that they didn't portray any humanity, honestly, in that area. There is nothing to portray. The biggest difference between Baltimore and Philadelphia is that Philadelphia and the resources that Baltimore will look, they don't have it on the front. They don't pay. There is nowhere to ask for help at all. There is not like that sense of humanity we wish you saw on the TV. They can't even turn to that up because it is one.
I've been to there one. I think the Baltimore's just like one G facility.
A lot of people
That's how I thought it when the whole scene was like.
a lot of people say that, but it's not necessarily. It really isn't because whereas no matter how much we pour into a certain area, especially we hoard so many resources. We try to get people on the streets, we try to get people out there in the community that help. And at the end of the day, it's always up to people to ask for we share man out and say, I will accept help. Out there is nobody asking for. There is nobody off at all. I mean, to even get community programs, the mayor and the governor, thank God that they have the mayor and governor that work together now. Because when Governor Hogan was the governor out there, they had no.
Roma didn't agree with that.
Hogan just left in 20, oh, let's see, 2021, 2022. Now they have Westmore doing a lot for, the state of Maryland overall.
You fly around?
No, I'm from here, but I got it for school.
Did you read a book? Did you read a book?
Yeah. Mhm.
Then I read. Okay, so I know that I read that book a long time ago. I think I got the from all the other words.
Yep, no, I know what I
Okay, and I know what it is.
now just as I'm out there and you've done it like so many great things, but for a long time, I mean, they couldn't even keep a mayor that couldn't stay on jail.
Saturday banger. I'm not a.
No, Sheila Dixon went to jail. Captain Pugh went to jail. Like for the last, I want to say 20 years out there, it's just been, there has been no structure to even have the DEIs and affirmative action. None of this stuff exists out there. So we just let it on. There is no humanity. Or there was no humanity on the show. Like, well, job you? It's like,
No, I like. You know what I actually said? I actually think that they did show some in the sense of saying like they had a kid naming.
yeah,
It was like a bad kid, but then they told us, okay, wants to be told, drop him off at the judge. Oh, wait. He ends up becoming a police officer. But I was like, that always bugged me, man. I was like,
to like how you were saying, well, that there were still or no after school activities.
let's go treatment. And we, people come up here, but down there and open up programs.
But even though they can't stay open, because people coming out there, you can't keep a computer in school. You can't keep an aspect school.
Okay, and basketball rims on the basketball court in the summertime. You got six.
Well, they don't even have basketball.
You gotta, it's like, you gotta like,
It's literally just open way. There is no books. There is no, I mean, I looked out there for 10 years. I got my bachelor's and my master's up there. I spent so much time outside of school trying to get resources for just random people. Well, I have met, but never seen, well, I've never encountered, lending people up here. My mom used to run program for undocumented Latino women or Latinas that needed health services. I used to ship them on the bus up here and get them a pile in and out of the city. Wow. So that they could get the services that they need. There are no services there.
yeah. The only other place I could pay them, you can like Detroit. Yeah.
People say that Baltimore is similar to Philly. Baltimore is where
Oh, yeah. She wrote this. Love wrote.
yeah, there's really infrastructure government like to have those resources. Whereas Detroit, it's a city. Eventually they get on their feet. Eventually, and the community as a city, they have a lot more of an option. Where Flint is so small.
It's it's out there. It's like I've actually wrote past there. It's like places like Flint, Michigan. This place isn't as bad or something, but it's just nothing there. Like Gary, Indiana. Yeah, like I was like there's nothing like go to like Gary, Indiana. Like there's nothing. There's none like at least if you're in Chicago right now, you're still within the city. Right, still bad parts. When you're in Gary, like it's just nothing.
Right.
There's just nothing there. It's almost like you're in a different country.
Yeah.
It's the same
They have those weird, like up in the Northeast, people think of Baltimore to be kind of like a smaller big thing. It's barely snowing.
Yeah, it's well, right. So
I mean, like they are at the downtown.
that's the hard part.
Yeah, that's all you got is a couple of us for. But there's not like place like Clay and like you never go to CBS and even see it not and look them but not see. Like it is truly and very to be out there. A couple people, it's a great place to visit. Don't process.
Absolutely.
I can't pack up here. Have them. See, get on Baltimore. No, you guys are ready.
We'll go maybe up 10 minutes. After that. Also, we started at 2:30. Flying.
All right, I'll count you down. Headquarters. 3, 2, 1. Report.
We're back. My water break. It went well. If you were wondering. Back on topic. Then we were talking about hip hop, rap.
Yeah, we was here and there.
Here and there, everywhere. No, I would say. Oh yeah, so I would say My favorite artist, well, I probably say, and it's funny, I don't even think he might have labeled himself a rapper at one point, but I would say Andre 3000. I would say this for he's never ever I have never heard a mediocre verse from him ever. Ever. He
Yeah, I
doesn't
give you
even
that.
he doesn't even rap. And his verses are so memorable where it's like you gotta go back and it's overused now. People say, no, you don't understand what he's saying. No, it's overdone now when people say you don't understand the meaning. No. Literally when he's
Yeah, you got to research.
go back to Miss Jackson, you Mr. or
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I would say him. Yeah, I think he actually released the album, I think maybe a couple years ago. It was just him playing the flute.
I listened to it for maybe 2.5 minutes.
Did you hear that one?
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting. I was like, yeah, he was like, people were like, why'd you release that album? He's like, look, I'm 40. He's like, I'm not gonna be rapping for. He's like, what am I gonna rap about? He's like, I'm 40 something. He's like, I can't.
People was trying to put beats behind.
Yeah, he's like, ooh, he's like, I'm done with. He's like,
mixing it to beats.
I'm done with that, but it's like I can only do that for so long for him. But no, I think that hip hop as a whole has a lot of potential to influence. It could be whatever you want it to be. It's an art form.
Yeah, well, because it went corporate, that changed it a lot. That took the purity from it. You know what I mean? And people was doing it to make money, but when it started, they really wasn't doing it to make money. Once they saw that it could make money and it was going to catch on and make a lot of money, then that's when the record execs and the AR people kind of, tinkled with the concept. But there was a time when it was pure and it came from the heart. And it didn't matter what you was talking about. You could be telling a story or, it came across, you know what I mean? But anything that turns corporate and goes corporate and it becomes just about the money, then it's going to change.
For sure. Well, Slick Rick had the song, the song Children's Story by Slick Rick. That's actually, if you actually listen to the lyrics, he's actually telling you, giving you a warning. It sounds like it's fun. And if you actually listen to the lyrics, he's actually giving you, painting some pretty grim pictures and stuff like that. So
a lot of the music had that message in it back then, whether it was, the Black Power music or not. A lot of it had a good message to it, just do the right thing for the right reason. The whole message of hip hop was lift yourself up by doing the right thing for the right reason. That was the initial message. That message kind of changed once things changed in the world. Drugs came in and so forth and so on. Record execs came in, kind of changed a little bit.
What do you think? What was your thought? Because I know you heard it back then. What was your thought when you heard NWA for the first time? What was your first impression?
And the funny, that's another excellent question, because me and my friends never wore gold. We had the black medallions. We was like the Black Power PE people.
Okay.
And we loved Tribe Called Quest and the Black Sheep, Public Enemy, all that kind of stuff. But even if the message wasn't about Black Power and it was hip hop, we still enjoyed it and we still listened to it. And when they came out with the gangster rap, that threw a monkey wrench in everything, because we was preaching one thing over here.
Right.
But when we put the gangster rap on, we couldn't stop listening to it.
Yeah.
Couldn't turn it off.
Yeah.
And we loved it. And for us, like me and my crew growing up, we weren't gangsters and we weren't criminals at that time. Right? But we knew about them. We seen them. We knew they was a part of the neighborhood. So to us, NWA was just telling that part of the story. But hip hop was so universal that it's 1,000 stories. That's just one in many. But for some reason, the whole gangster thing kind of took off and developed a life of its own, and became a big thing.
Yeah.
But even though we would listen to it, we never wanted to be that. Like when Ice-T came out,
right,
and he had that album cover,
yeah.
We was looking at that album cover like, wow, he's a real gangster.
Yeah. It's funny you said Ice-T. That's exactly what I was getting ready to ask you. Then.
Like this guy, he's not just rapping, he's the real thing.
Yeah.
But see, for us back then, there was a difference between regular hip hoppers and gangsters. They wasn't one and the same. We was just kids who liked the beat and liked the lyrics. But that could take anything. Gangsterism was just one small part of it. You know, but NWA was very talented. But again, that's the record execs taking over, looking at what people are going to buy into, and watch it go to the moon. You know, and he told them, look, if y'all do this, it'll go to the moon. He was right.
No, he knew.
He was right.
Yeah.
You know, and as long as we was just listening to music, I think it was okay. It just took a bad turn when youngsters started to identify their favorite rapper by the ability to do what they actually say. When he said that, it blew me away.
Well, it's like an actor, right? You know, nobody is like, could you imagine if in every role, every actor you imagine it's like every actor actually had to be what they're portraying? Well, that's it. Well, first of all, they wouldn't be acting. But second of all, would you imagine in every role, every Jason Bourne or Denzel Washington movie, he actually had to be a kingpin of Harlem. He had to actually have sold heroin back in the day, or this person. So I'm like,
and some of them guys, you know, when they go through them dramatic roles, they got to get a little therapy coming off of that to get back to themselves.
Michael B. Jordan, when he was in Black, because I think he played probably one of the best. Well, I would argue this. I don't think he was actually a villain, quote unquote, in that movie. That's a different conversation for a different one. But he said he had to get therapy after playing Killmonger.
Wow.
Because he was in so much isolation and his character was based on so much rage and anger. Your body,
He had to tap into that.
your body doesn't know that, even though you're doing this for a movie, your body doesn't know the difference.
That's
and
right.
he said after, he said, I had to get psychiatric help. So I can only imagine, right? So this goes to Tupac, but another person who actually died, rest in peace, I think it's Michael K. Williams, who played Omar on The Wire. He said, I was a background dancer growing up as a kid. I was a nerdy kid. And he said, this is the first time in my life I played Omar, a cool gangster drug dealer. He said, that was the first time I felt powerful in my life.
Wow.
And he actually had developed a drug addiction, right? He's like so up to performing and this or that. He's like, I was known as Corny Mike, but now I'm Cool Omar. And everybody thinks I'm cool and I'm this or that. So this goes to Tupac, right? So you got this role of this guy, Bishop, who, you know, his father went through stuff, but it's just, he never came out of that role. So I can absolutely see, you know, that dragged him into other things. But I'm like, yeah, he never came out of that role ever.
Wow.
So it's all tied in. But man, I think, I mean to cut you off, but I've been kind of close to time right now. But I would say too, to give myself my own testimonial, this has been a hell of a show. I would curse, but I have a feeling my mom might be watching it. So I'll let the guests do it for me. So, but I appreciate you for stopping by. This was a
Pleasure was all mine.
infatuating conversation.
Appreciate it.
Nice to meet you.
Appreciate it.
So, till next time, number 5.